Hello, and welcome to the 15th Annual Los Angeles Greek Film Festival panel and Q&A series. My name is Laurel Yanalos, Event Coordinator for LAGFF. We have an exciting and innovative workshop planned for today, and we would like to create a space that's as in-person as possible. To do this, we will be inviting you to share your stories, questions, or concerns on camera or anonymously via the chat function. You will have two options. One, if you'd like to speak on camera, just click the icon of the hand at the bottom of your screen, and we will ask you to take the floor in the order that it has been received. Or if you do not have the option to click the hand icon or would like to stay anonymous, please type your question in the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and I will do my best to read your question so it may be answered live. Please note that this event is being recorded and streaming live on Facebook. We ask that you keep your mics at the bottom left muted at all times except when you speak. Please help us maintain a respectful environment throughout the workshop. For those of you joining us on Facebook Live, if you would like to be a part of this conversation, you can find the link on the Facebook page. And with that, let's get started. It is my honor and privilege to introduce to you the Los Angeles Greek Film Festival co-founder, Ersi Daniel.
Thank you, Laurel, and welcome everyone. As we all know, the film industry is rocked by sea change right now, and all we can do is ride the wave, transform with it, embrace it. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you my friend and colleague, Karina Rosanna Tautu, who is a filmmaker and a professional mediator. And I feel that she's best qualified to point us to the right direction towards a more equitable but fun and safe workspace. Welcome, Karina.
Thank you so much, Ersi, and thank you, Laura, for introducing us. It's my pleasure to be here. I consider the Los Angeles Greek Film Festival to be my home as a filmmaker and now as a mediator, which is so exciting. These are two of my passions, and I would love to get our collaboration that started a few years ago going forever. So I would start my presentation. I would like to welcome everyone. I know some people registered from all over the world. I don't see them right now where you are, but welcome. Thank you for being here. This is a very important discussion. I think it's a very brave discussion, and we have to start talking about it. We started talking about the Me Too movement, and I'm as a mediator, I'm interested deeply on how can we move forward out of this. So here it is, sharing my screen. I hope everyone can see this. So welcome to Braving Professionalism. The question that we kind of built this workshop around is, can we be professional and respectful while keeping a playful spirit at the same time? And as Ersi pointed out, we're transforming as an industry. I think the world is moving and transforming all the time. And we went through quite a cataclysmic transformation a couple of years back. And it's time to not only ask questions, but to find solutions, right, to the problems that arise. And if you look at the picture on the screen, it's blurry and it's funny, and it's intentionally blurry because I feel life is always a little bit not so sharp. We don't know exactly what's happening all the time, and images can be deceiving. And I would say that picture, I took it with, of course, with an old phone at the very early hour of the night, about 3 a.m. in Ikaria. And it's a strange coincidence with the Greek Film Festival, because at that time I didn't know about the existence of Greek Film Festival in Los Angeles. I was living on the East Coast. And the story goes that I read an article in the New York Times that said, oh, this is the island where people forget to die. But, and that was kind of the catchy title, but what interested me was that in Ikaria, people created a we community versus a me community. And I was like, wow, that's very interesting. And that was around 2010, I think, when this whole discussion of Me Too movement and our collective, how do we handle ourselves in groups, right, properly, was not even out there. And I said, one day I want to go to that island. Little I knew that at the time I was married, and in 2 years I'd be divorced, date a Greek, and land in Ikaria for a wedding, and dance with the people. And long story short, I want to say that dancing with the Icariots, I had one of the most profound revelations that I could have, not only as a mediator, but as a human being, because we were all dancing, right? You can see it's a little bit chaotic. And at one time, some people would become aggressive or kind of disturbing. And I remember kind of feeling, irritated, like, why are they doing this? And then I realized that everybody else is actually dancing on this beautiful music, and we're all synchronized and in flow. And no matter what others, very few actually would do, because usually the disturbances are small. We perceive them big because they're like so in our face. But no matter what they were doing, the dance would go on. We would all be connected and dance on this beautiful music and be in this heart space. That was amazing. So I was like, wow, can we do that in real life? And I think, this is the question right now that we're asking on this workshop. Can we keep dancing, right, the right way, containing the disturbances and working with them and making them kind of dissolve, ideally? So I would say as artists, we are meant to push boundaries, not to be confined by them. And I can also say that growing up in Romania during the communist times, especially the darkest times in the 80s, I've seen art pushing boundaries in the best way possible. And I believe that that's possible. We would go to the theater and we would go to cinema, and we would have this underground movement of jokes that were literally saving our souls during those very intense and basically during a time where we had no hope. And I know for a fact that art needs to push the boundaries, because there were political jokes and there were, little things that you would go to a very serious Chekhov story, and then one of the actors would throw in like a little joke, commenting on a political situation, and we'd all laugh. And that made us, like in Ikaria, feel connected. And kind of like it was this underground feeling that, well, it might be really bad, but things can go well too. And we know each other. So I would say there's a fine line between daring also and harming others for the sake of achievement or standing out. And this is what we saw in the Me Too movement. Basically, the Me Too movement was very necessary and I welcome it. But of course, we kind of all knew that things were bad and nobody had the courage to address it. So it's an interesting thing how, like, even if we wanted or not, right, as Ursi was pointing out before, basically the world is changing and it's going to ask us to change with it. I would say skeptics, would always say you cannot change the world, but the world is changing, as I said, and we can change our inner world first. I deeply believe that as mediator and as a contemplative arts practitioner. And by changing your inner world, you change your environment around you a little bit. It's a very slow process, but somehow it fires up. And in the long term, we do change the world. Call me an optimist, but I believe that can happen. So in the post-Me Too movement, right, that we're right now, the world on the film sets I heard that it stopped to be fun. I've been less on the film sets lately because I went in law school. But in law school, the surprise was that the word was coming out that, you know, you had litigations over a hug that would last a little bit longer than normal. And the absurdity of what I was hearing from the legal side of things kind of made me intrigued. I was like, what's happening? So from one side of the pendulum that was like so necessary to look at all these things, the abuses, and as I said, I welcomed that movement. It was so necessary. Like we went on the absurdity of, you know, abuses on this other side, people taking advantage of a situation, like, you know, being hugged too long and then wanting money. So it's like, how do we find the middle way? This is the question, right? The middle way is a big Buddhist concept, but I think we're always kind of going from one extreme to another, and then hopefully we're going to find the answers and the solutions to move forward and to change. So one of the main the points of this talk are basically under emphasizing discipline and creativity, how do we go from one to the other, protection and control, safety and playfulness, ambition over competitiveness. I think the last one is very important to notice, because a lot of the stories of, you know, sexual harassment, and, you know, we know all these horrendous stories and the drama behind it, but we talk less about the fact that it's a power struggle, and at the core of it, it's this ambition versus over competitiveness that make us do things that are regrettable, I would say, in the long run. So I would ask everyone, if you're here, and I don't see again a lot of you, I see a couple of familiar faces, but I don't know how many are on Facebook. But if you, again, I will repeat, if you want to join us in a discussion, please click on the link on Facebook. You can register for this and become part of it, directly interacting with me and with the others who are here. And if you can take a moment to write down the best moment you had on set and the worst moment that you remember being on set. Not in detail, but just like a small note. It's good to keep that in mind while we're going through the steps. And if you're not part of the film industry, I would say write down or make a mental note of your best moment working with the team and the worst moment working with a team, just to kind of go into that space and question it a little bit, like why that happened, why at one point this can be the best thing in the world, and then sometimes it can be hell on earth. Personally, I love being on set, right? And I think most of us as filmmakers are in this insane industry because we love being on set. And the question is, why do we love being on set? I think the answer is that I like working with people, and people can be like angels, or we can have hell on earth working together. Now, you have my biography if you haven't had the chance to read it, but I'm not gonna give you the technical aspects of who I am. It's my story versus my biography. Because there's always a blurry line, right? Who am I? And what am I doing, actually? I would just want to share the fact that growing up in Romania, I never imagined I'm going to be an artist. In 1980s, in Romania, kids who were good in math and having engineer parents like myself, all we could kind of expect is to become another scientist or another engineer. And my track was neuroscience. I actually have a master's in neuroscience, in neurobiology. And when 1989 happened, when the Iron Curtain fell, things changed again. World does change unexpectedly, right? Even if we want it or no, not. And all structures fall apart, new things arise. And suddenly, after my father died in 1991, I need to help my mother and to pay for my sister's tutoring sessions. She was preparing for the architecture school. So I asked a friend to get a job, and he was like, yes, we have a job as a translator. I didn't ask where or what. I just said, okay, I'll take it. That's fantastic. I can speak some English and some French. And little I knew that that job was basically getting me on an American film set in Romania. And again, long story short, once I stepped on that set, first I said, these people are crazy, because I was a scientist. But then those crazy people came to me and said, you know, you got the bug, right? And you know, you're going to come back here. And well, 25 years later, I'm still here. I'm still going to go on set every time I'm going to get a call. And I hope I'm going to still make movies. That's for sure. And as we know, and I said before, a good set and working with people can be the best and the best thing in the world. And I've experienced that, but also can be hell on earth. How can we get out of hell? That's the big question. Now, there is an old saying in the Balkans, and I know everybody's claiming this, but I heard it from my great-grandmother, my Romanian great-grandmother. A fish rots from the head down. I deeply believe that basically if we lead by example, we can set up the world the right way. And if we oversee things and we're going by ambition, we might actually set up ourselves for hell on earth, right, on a set. I think that that's the core issue, especially when we're in positions of power, like a producer or a director. Now, it's not always easy to control, how you're building a team, how you're who you're hiring. We're so interdependent on so many things and so many people. That's true. But I still believe that these are, the things that we need to look at is how we behave and take responsibility for that. As I said, you cannot probably change the world, but you can set up an example. I find that the key for creating a solid team is basically integrity and trust. And it's a lot to talk about these things, but I would just say, to build integrity and trust, we need some skills, not only just a great, natural inclination to do it. And there's tools and there's skills that can be learned. And I definitely learned those skills in mediation school, even better than, like I've heard and learned on set. And I would like to share some of those with you. But before I do this, I want to ask people, and put this question out there, what do you think conflict is? I was very well surprised to learn as a mediator that we can look at conflict as something really bad, but actually a conflict is nothing else but a scream for change and an opportunity to readapt and re-examine what's happening. Conflict is not bad in itself. What's bad is the way we usually address it, by avoiding it, right? Most of the time we avoid conflict like fire. We avoid it so much until we get basically a 1989 revolution in Eastern Europe, or a Me Too movement, or a Black Lives Matter, right? Things are exploding. So if we learn to identify the tension and the need for change early enough, then we might actually have great tools and the ability to not to dissolve a conflict, but to address it properly. And I also want to say, what is a mediator and who are the mediators? I would say everyone is a mediator. This is, like from mediating your, like a bargain in any store to negotiating with your kids to go to bed at night, you are a mediator. And as a producer and a director, is really important to be aware that you are a mediator and you can always solve things. I'm gonna move on and share basically what Brené Brown, I would say, put out there and invented. It's an acronym for her tools to develop trust and integrity, but especially trust. There's a great talk on that you can find online called The Anatomy of Trust. You can Google it and you can access that. Basically, it's like a lecture on how to build trust. And I took her system and I would like to adopt it here for us to talk about it. So Braving, she define it like this. B is from boundaries, R from reliability, A from accountability, V from vault of confidence, it's creating a safe container, I for integrity, N from non-judgment, and G from generosity. I would like to invite everyone, if you have stories or you want to have questions and comments on this, to come into each of these letters and topics and collaborate, because I don't want to have this lecture. It's already, I feel like I'm talking by myself to a screen instead of seeing all of you. And of course, this is like, it goes against the soul of this workshop, which is working collaboratively. Oh my God,
Great.
collaboration. And so anyway, boundaries. My first boundary, I'm like, oh, I have to breathe.
Karina, would you like to right now open it up to the humans to come on and talk about boundaries, or would you like to do the slide first?
Yes, I would like to open it right here, boundaries, and I'm going to talk about this point while if we have stories shared, I'd like to intertwine them.
So if anyone from our audience that are now panelists would like to come up, please just raise your hand or type in the chat function. We'll continue on with this boundary panel, but please do not hesitate, do not be shy. We want to create as an interactive environment as possible. So with that, boundaries. Karina, go ahead. I'll wait for people to raise their hands or tap in the chat.
Okay. I don't see, I see so I have no control of what's happening. You can keep them on. Nobody wants to jump in? Nobody has a story about boundaries? I can share one.
Maybe I would like to jump in here, just say, maybe we need to hear a little more about boundaries, and then from you, Karina, and then
Sure.
I'm sure people will want to join the conversation.
For sure. I'm going to share one kind of quick story that happened personally. Like when I got divorced, the first thing that I've done after like moving from the East Coast here, I went on the internet and I Googled boundaries and I printed everything that I found and literally glue it to my mirror in my bathroom. And I'm not going to go into details why, but my friends would come and look at this, like the print on the bathroom, and they were like, were you abused? And I was like, no, I actually had a great marriage for 14 years. People divorce, for different reasons, but I had no concept of boundaries. I really understood. I've done therapy. I'm educated. I read about it. I I was aware of it, but I really didn't take it seriously, and I didn't look in depth of what boundaries mean, right? I also practice meditation, and I can say, there is a concept there of like who you are, like knowing yourself is crucial, but we really rarely talk about boundaries per se. And on a set, I think a lot of people, women and men, have their boundaries crossed. It's very easy to make a joke, right, about someone. To, like, for example, I hired a great DP that was highly recommended by someone. I was new to Los Angeles, and he was like important to me, and this was an important project that I was doing. And I had a few red flags about him, but of course I kept going. I was like, all right, I can deal with this, right? I can handle this. And we were different cultures, and I would say even different races. And everything was very sensitive, but I really wanted to make this project. So the last drop on the whole thing was that we had a production meeting, and he was very gracious. He invited all my whole crew in his house, and we had the production. We finished it, and I remained there, and then I cleaned up, and then he made a comment about my legs, and my heart stopped because I was very tired, and I was really highly respectful of him. I wanted him to be my collaborator, but that's it. And I didn't know at the time what to do. I kind of brushed it very lightly with a joke, but I almost didn't even address it. And I went home. And long story short, that production turned into a bit of a hell, right? And, I'm sorry?
This sounds like this story is incredible. I'm sorry, keep going.
And, when I'm looking back, it was like, this last drop, right, has a sexual connotation, but it's just an expression of other things that happened before, and I didn't want to address them. So it was one more push and one more push and one more push, and ended up being into this kind of a passive aggressive tension on set that really didn't benefit the production. So I would invite, if you have stories similar, I would invite you to bring them to the table, because it's better to talk about them than to just lecture on boundaries. But I would say, like in my case, for example, right, when I look back, what did I do wrong about it? And it's nothing wrong. This is what I knew at this time, but I wish I knew the fact that if I would call out, even in that moment, saying, hey, I'm sorry, this is very uncomfortable for me. You're making things very uncomfortable. Can we reset, right? Can we actually make sure we're on the same page? Not only with this, but with all the other issues that I had before. And believe me, before that happened, I also had, I forgot to say, it crossed my mind, I should just end the collaboration and wait and not make the film, because I felt unsafe. I felt like something is not right. There was something, a hunch, right? But I swallowed, bit the bullet, shut up, and I was like, I want to make a movie. I really want to make a movie. And it didn't go well, as I said. So I always wonder, like, what happened? What would have happened if I have addressed it in the first place? And I think it would have been a different situation. But, you grow up and you get older and you know better. So that's one of my stories with boundaries and basically reliability, which is going to be the next step. Anybody wants to jump in?
Does anyone have any stories or comments they would like to add to the conversation? Because I know I have definitely had circumstances that are very similar. So in my head, the only thing I'm questioning, Karina, is like, have you had any experiences since? And as a mediator with your knowledge, have you had any positive experiences with stating your boundaries and seeing how, saying, oh, I'm sorry, like this does make me uncomfortable? Because I find when I do say that, or when I, as a female, when I do state my boundaries, it kind of puts them on the defensive, and it creates a different narrative where it becomes like a little bit of a victim shaming. And I'm just wondering if you have found positive resources or know how to handle that reaction.
Yes, I think it's very difficult, and especially when we're in this kind of very blurry situation. The reason I put up the picture of the tango dancers, that's actually one of my films, and I started this film during my law school days, because I was like, oh, tango, that's a great metaphor for how can we mediate between male and female, feminine and masculine. Right on the picture here, we don't know, is she seducing him or is she really caring? It's so strange, right? What I find that I do better now, and I think I've done it before in my 20s naturally, but now I do it consciously, is, I'm very aware of the fact that we cannot control the others. We cannot educate them. We cannot change them. One of the big mediators that I interviewed recently and I talked to many times, he said, people don't change their minds. They might change their attitude with a new piece of information. So basically, giving them a piece of information that would switch a little bit their perspective, it's all that I expect. I have very low expectations, but I'm more centered and I'm more, how should I say, I know better who I am, and I'm not so easily unbalanced by people who come at different angles with different comments. And I'm always aware that there is another story behind, whatever's coming to me, there is a story there. I'm trying to anchor in compassion, and I'm trying to listen. And sometimes, there are situations that are very extreme, and the best way is to get out. There's also the situation when a kid crosses the street, right? And a car comes and you want to scream. You want to scream to make him aware. And you might have to get a little bit emotional. I'm not saying to be completely Zen, right? Or what we think is Zen. Because in Zen, it's like destroying is one of the tools we're using. And I'm basically, that's where I stand. That's what I stand for, like being much more aware and being kind and asking, hey, why did you make that comment? Do you know that makes me uncomfortable? So would anybody want to jump in?
I would like to say something. It's a little scary. I understand what you're saying, because you really have to be brave, and for women to come up with this story.
Men too.
We hide them so that we can go on. But recently I co-directed a music video with a dear friend who is also a female director. And we needed a little help with color correction. And so a friend of a friend, we didn't have much money to spend. So we got this professional to work with us. I mean, he was a filmmaker himself. And he took our material and he did something completely out of the blue, completely his own idea. Here is what I did. We had a special effect, something visual, and we wanted to keep it the way it was. He thought, this is not good, I need to fix it. And he did another special effect and he gave it to us. And just, I think this is, I think if we were men, this would not have happened. I think he would just be a lot more respectful of our work and us as filmmakers. I just wanted.
It happens, that's it's kind of a classic, I would say, and I say that's with all due respect for men who are respectful to women. But there was one Sufi teacher that I read. He's like a normal being who lived in San Francisco, and his wife and him, they were both university professors, and they would go to a meeting, and she would say something, she would propose something to the committee, who was all men, and everybody would ignore that proposal. And then he would come and say exactly the same thing, and they would be like, oh my God, that's amazing. And he would say, well, I'm glad you're saying this because she said exactly the same thing, right? I wish we had something like this all the time to point out the differences, because they're still happening. But yeah, it is a scary place, and I don't have answers for everything. I think, again, I'm going back to, the fish starts to rot from the head. I think when we're looking back at our choices, because, as you said, right, we didn't have enough money, we needed a favor, you're always kind of making yourself smaller than you think you are. And then you go for a compromise and you wonder, like, is that worth it? Sometimes I find that when you ask people who are really successful and you would think they're never available, they would actually be more generous than others, and they would not go through the same humiliation, that this person put you through. Like, it's hard to, like, how do we do it? It's more like how we become aware not to do it again. Does it make sense?
No, that absolutely makes sense to me. Absolutely. Everything. I mean, from anchoring in compassion to finding worth within yourself from what you're made to feel.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
makes sense.
Are there any other questions? I've seen some comments on the live, and I don't know if they're on the side, on the chat.
I think we can go ahead and move along. At the end of this presentation, we'll have a gallery open conversation for everyone.
Yes.
We do have one question, wondering if the director position is not predefined as a machismo position in the team.
I'm a woman director. It's predefined. That's the question. I'm sorry.
Anyways, go on. I'll ask.
Can you rephrase it one more time, please?
I'm going to ask for clarity on the question, and so we can move on to reliability and maybe come back to it.
I want to talk about that. Definitely on reliability. I want to come back, because that's a very important question, right? Because we think, yeah, only men. That's a classic, the man is leading, and it's not true. And women are crossing boundaries as well. So I would like to address that. That would be a very important question. So anyway, reliability. That's basically, you do what you say you're going to do over and over and over again. How many people we know that we can rely on? There are very few, right? And we wish we had more. Can we teach them reliability? Yes, we can, if we are reliable. Again, it's going back to the fact that we set up the tone, and we are building a team. And by showing them that we are reliable, they're going to eventually become reliable themselves. I can share a story from the time when I was actually teaching inner city kids, inner city youth. There were a lot of adolescents, men, young men who were pretty troubled. And I would never forget this kid who looked at me in the eye and said, you know, nobody believes that I'm good at anything. I'm not going to do this. And, you know, like, you're probably going to think the same thing. And this is it. Basically, I'm giving up on myself. And the way, like, it freaked me out because, and I was sincere. And I said exactly what I felt. But it took a moment to, I was like, okay, if I don't say this, I'm going to lose this kid, right? And I looked at him right in the eye and I said, listen, all I know is that your name is, and I'm not going to say the name here, and that you're very good with camera. That's all I know. How about we work with this? And the change in his face, like on his whole figure, like I would never forget it. Because basically, you know, I told him, I trust you. And I know you can be reliable on this area. And he did, you know, after that, he made a movie. And I can say, yes, it's just one example, but it is a very good example. And I know that if we continue to do this, you know, you can change, as I said, maybe not the world, but the world around you. And that's palpable. And it's definitely doable with your team. And when somebody's not reliable, have the courage with compassion to call them out and say, hey, this is, you know, what I expect of you. And this is how I function. Can we find the middle way? Or can we depart? And on reliability, I put the trust in precogs, you know, like you don't want to be like, you don't want to test people with an extreme, like, hey, can you catch me? That's another, you know, good reminder. Or kind of expect people to be precogs. You want to stay again in the middle and always check with them and communicate properly. Now, I just told this story. I would like to invite other people to come in. Is anybody else in the audience who would like to share a story about reliability, boundaries, or either accountability, or anything related to how do we build trust and integrity? Laura?
Would anyone like to raise their hand or ask the question? I don't see any hands raised right now, Karina, so maybe move on to accountability at this time. Oh, we do have a question from Ian.
Sorry, Ilinka, it's my name. Okay, I'm coming from Bucharest, Romania. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. Hi, Karina. Well, I was just trying to add to that first question. That was not really a question, it was only an observation there. Coming from my experience, I'm a sound artist. I'm directing more like audio dramas. And as I worked in Bucharest, in Central Europe, in Czech Republic, but also in Paris, in Western Europe, I saw a bit the difference in how you are perceived as a head of a team, in fact, because as a director, you are a head of a team. And when I came back to Bucharest, I said, okay, mainly you are supposed a bit to violate the team energetically in order to settle your authority.
Yes.
And this is very manly. I mean, this is the way they are perceiving the role, the position of a director that really handles things. Yeah. If not, if you are trying to cope with them, if you are trying to relate in a more let's say open and tender way, even, then you are in a danger to be beheaded in the team. And that's what I was referring to while putting this topic. Let's say, if you had this feeling, I had it really. I mean, the challenge with the actors, for
Yeah.
instance, if you are not imposing a certain energy of omniscience, of kind of a patriarchal energy, you are
Yes.
a bit discredited. If you are coming in a more open, feminine way, let's say, and try to relate with them from a equal position, then you risk to be bullied, and this is a way of, I think, discrimination as well.
Yes, it is, and it's a great point to bring up. Thank you so much, Ilinka, and don't minimize your importance. Ilinka is one. It's the top, basically radio theater director, and I would say in Europe, she won all the awards possible out there. She's doing amazing work. Unfortunately, it's like limited sometimes by Romanian language, but she's an amazing actress. She's an amazing director, and she works with amazing actors. And I know exactly what you're saying because we were pretty much in the same school. And there's a reason I'm out here. You're much stronger than I am. I think there is a major cultural difference for sure. Like here, I think the professionalism, it's somehow ingrained because it's a large industry. And I think also, for example, in the United States, we do talk a lot about psychology. We do, now we have Brené Brown. There's a lot of emotional intelligence that's been discussed for years. In the Balkans, unfortunately, we're a little bit more, what's the right word, narrow, I would say. And I definitely remember the days when I was supposed to prove myself, right? I have a story that after leaving from Romania to New York, I got hired by PBS, and I worked with this DP that came from England, and he was 50 something, I was 30, in my early 30s, and I was shocked that he and I, we didn't even have to talk. Everything I was saying, I was proposing, he was like, yeah, sure, go on. At one point, it was like this non-verbal communication going, and it freaked me out, literally. I was like, whoa, how is that possible? And then I was like, oh, wait a second. He sees me, he trusts me. There's a mutual trust and respect, but also he trusts himself, right? To know that I am who I am, and at the competent level that he saw that in me. So it's like a mutual recognition, and that's when things are good and people are a little bit more relaxed. In a culture that's in general, I think, more aggressive, we do have this challenge. I remember, and when this happened with this DP, I realized that I was challenged all the time by all my cinematographers before. And I always thought, oh, it's my fault. It's going to be like something, maybe I didn't do it enough. And then I was like, no, they're not emotionally mature enough to see where I am. And the challenge came from their insecurity, right? Again, you cannot really train people, but I think you can disengage. And I know, the world that we're in, you can prove your power without getting involved emotionally and consuming yourself emotionally. And this is a very delicate thing that I'm saying. It's basically going back to what I said, when a kid crosses the road, right? You have to scream, because otherwise he's not gonna, you're not gonna make him like, or her, not cross and be crushed by the car. But that scream doesn't have to be angry. And this is where I'm saying, yes, the environment is crazy maybe, or very aggressive, but you don't have to become the same way. You can step back, and yes, you can be forceful, but not, that's an act that you're putting out there. It's not really who you are and how you're acting, and you can do it without the anger and without mirroring back the energy that they're putting back. It's almost like you're absorbing. It's like in Tai Chi or Aikido, you're absorbing it, your energy, you hold your space. And I know you're doing very well. I know you. But this is the solution is basically doing Aikido with them. And
thank you so much, Karina. We have another question from, I think, Irini Katopodes.
yes,
Did you
please.
go away?
Hi, Karina. Thank you so much for having this talk. I think it's really important. I just wanted to know your just your thoughts on these boundaries that we set in like professional environments and how we react to those boundaries being crossed. I know personally, if a man's like gotten very in my personal space in any setting, not just professional, I feel like there's this fight or flight response where I either become extremely nice and extremely accommodating and
Yes.
polite, in order, and even if it's not something like I think it's gonna harm me immediately, I have that reaction because it's like a protection. Or it goes the complete opposite way and you get very aggressive, and that scream of anger that you mentioned maybe comes up. But I guess my question is, when you find yourself in situations like that and you don't always have the time to adjust your thinking to react in a way that benefits everyone, like how do you prepare yourself for these situations and then recognize them as they happen rather than being surprised? You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And I think what you just said that you did, that, you become extremely polite, is actually a very smart reaction. And I know, we're always, and it happens to men too, and we have to say it. We're always taken by surprise because you never, what we all want, right? To be loved, to be seen, and to be respected. That's like a natural human need. And when we are faced with this kind of weird, especially unexpected reactions, of course, it's okay to be uncomfortable and not know what to do. Now, being extremely polite, that's a great boundary, right? It's going to push that right there, because if they are not completely psychotic, they would get the message. They'll say, oh, what happened there? Because the energy would shift. But anyway, I'm sorry, I just lost, your question was about...
I guess just like how would you prepare yourself for the situations? How do you like prepare your mind to react, especially when it's like maybe it's a friend you didn't expect to react that way to you. Maybe it's a stranger and the politeness. I'm also wondering, like, when you get polite like that, is it bad because you're showing them kindness when they're doing something wrong? And like you don't want to teach them like, hey, this was a pleasant moment for both of us, but you're also protecting yourself. So anyway, just
no. So preparation is actually everything. That's what I said. Again, you cannot change others, you can only change yourself. And unfortunately, it comes with some maturity. So you're very young, and I know you're also a powerful woman. So meditation practice, it really helped me personally, because again, nobody can unbalance you if you're totally centered. Now, we're not always, in that like blissful moment space, and we're always tired, and we actually have a reason for calling the production times shooting times, right? And it's shooting personality. When we go on screen on sets, we call it shooting personality. Everybody's a little, not at their best, let's say. But by doing a lot of work on set, you're going to become better and better. By doing a lot of work on yourself and really rooting and understanding who you are. It's the old Greek saying, know thyself. the more you know, okay, I'm going to be flared up by this, or now I'm really angry. And when you're really angry, you can say it. It's actually so good to tell people, you know what, this got me so angry, or you trigger me right here. It's very effective to call it out. And also to make a comment, like, it's not inappropriate to scream or be like angry, especially when you're cornered. I always say, when you're clubbed in a dark alley, you're not going to be like, hey, you know what, you're disturbing the neighbors, right? Don't scream. Scream. And then you go back and you apologize. You can go and say, hey, you know what, maybe I've done this a little bit over, it's over emotional here, but you know, it really hurts. Being in constant connection, right? Like in the dance, it can actually contain anything. Flow contains conflict. I love to say that 1,000 times, because when we're truly connected, we don't disconnect, and the disconnection makes the conflict actually flare up more. That's, you know, what I would say. So I just want to thank you very much, Eline, for this. It's really, I would like to go on, but I would like to open the floor for everyone. And I just want to finish this presentation so we don't go out of time, because it's 1 o'clock. So accountability, it's basically what Brené Brown says: emotional maturity and responsibility towards a bigger goal than that, just yourself. I'm going to go back to the eukaryotic goal, right? It's we mentality versus me mentality. So important. And another thing that I would like to say, and we say that a lot on contemplative practices, it's not about you. Even when you feel like things are coming at you really badly, it's not about you, especially when you're in production, right? Putting yourself in that mindset, it's not about me, helps to see a little bit better, a little bit more clarity. You have a little bit more clarity in a fuzzy situation, I would say. And personalities are just masks. See beyond the mask. That's another thing that I would like to comment. If anybody would like to elaborate on that, I can come back later to it. Protection and control is such a difference, right, between being protected, so you can see the bird here yourself, and being actually free and protected. It's such a fine balance. And as directors and collaborators, I would suggest that everybody should look at how do we cross that line, because we all do it, right? We all get, when we get fearful, we get in control mode. When we are a little bit more balanced, we're actually able to hold space and protect properly, like this little bird. Now, the last two, vault and create a safe container. You definitely need your trust team, but be aware of not creating like silos. In the corporate world, we know that pretty well, but on set, the best example is like, you know, you have above the line people on one corner and below the line people on the other corner. I would say the king story of, you know, in Romania, I would say good king would come back and drink with the commoners, right? Do that. If you're a producer, go and talk and have a drink and have lunch with your PAs, hear what they're saying, don't lose contact with them. And if you're a PA and want to go up, that's a little bit more difficult, but definitely if you're a leader, sit down. At lunchtime is the best time to connect with people, or like dinner time, and listen, right? Deep listening is a crucial skill. And then integrity, act what you profess, walk the walk, don't just the talk. We all make mistakes. This is very important to know. We all get tempted. We all cross the line, or here and there. Like, as I said, with self-irony, I thought I'm funny and smart, and I would always cross the line. Not funny. And have the courage to be yourself. That is a whole topic on itself. Now, non-judgment, the last one, I would just comment on this, that everything is highly personal and highly impersonal. I find this saying from Carolyn Myss really useful. When you look at what I said before, this is not about you. And in fact that everybody has a story. And even if it looks very aggressive and it feels very aggressive to you, there might be on the other side a really, really sad story. It would help to stay on the middle way. And last but not least, generosity. I think true artists are very generous. And like Avalokiteshvara here, I'm not going to say the story again, you can read it. Have one extra pair of hands. I think I mentioned that I cook meals for my team every single time I make a film. And at one point I had a major issue with a producer, and I invited everyone here, and my DP was here, my assistants, and I said, you know what, we're just gonna have a meal, let's see what happens. And the issue came out, and my team was like, no way, Karina, you're not gonna do this. It was so clear. It was so clear. And the producer was like surprised, like, why, you don't want to do this? We're trying to do everything for you. And they were like, no, we're not going to let you do this. It's absurd. So, it came from a place of generosity. It was we all had a meal. Well, unfortunately, I didn't talk again with that producer, but I didn't get in a production that would have got me and my team in a bad situation. And I'm glad for it. So I'm not going to go into neo-feminism, but I'm going to open the floor for questions and comments or anything. I would love to hear from you. Laura?
At this time, guys, we're going to go into gallery view so that we can just have a chat and open up the dialogue and continue sharing questions or stories. So if anyone has any questions, and please feel free to to show your video and also unmute yourself when you're ready to speak. If you'd like to be a part of a chat or discuss what we just talked about or share some stories. Ersi, do you want to go first?
Yes, sorry to come up again. I just wanted to bring up the subject of male versus female. And like you said, Karina, it's not always that women are the victims here and the ones who are being transgressed. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I heard from mostly the corporate world, less on the film, because of course I have very few friends who are film directors, so few. There were moments when, speaking of boundaries, actually someone said this person who was pretty high up on the hierarchy, she would hug everyone, right? Hugs can be a problem. I said it's not okay to enter litigation, but there can be a problem. So this woman was hugging all the subordinates all the time, way too long. And they were subordinates. They couldn't say anything. They were really trapped in that situation. She was married. Every time her partner, like her husband, would show up, she would not even know them. And then every time he was away, she would continue to actually touch them, to what my friend, it's a friend of mine who shared that story, felt not only uncomfortable, but really weird. So, I'm sharing this story because it's like, this is a real field situation. And we have to be aware that women are as predatory sometimes as men. And to be honest, if I'm looking back at my career, I had, yes, as Ilinka was saying, because we're coming from the same world, that, you have to fight, and that's there, definitely in the Balkan area. But I was hurt by women more than men. And I find in my work on different levels that one of the things that it's crucial to develop is a women connection, not in a competitive way, but in a collaborative way. Men have a natural way of collaborating. I always say, like, if you put 11 guys in a room, in 11 seconds, you get a soccer team. That's done. But if you get 11 women, it takes about 11 years to like get them to work together. It's really that, and I've seen this on the spiritual, in spiritual communities. I've seen it, in set. I remember being on a women in film set. There were about 40 women. I was the first AD, and it was crazy. It was just women, and I freaked out. And it's interesting to see that women over 35, and this is kind of an age discrimination, and I apologize for it, but I have to point it out because there's something about the generation, because everybody over 40 fought so much to be on that set, right? They were so desperate, and they were highly competitive. Everybody actually under 35 was so easy to collaborate. I don't know if it's the Ted Bears, the Care Bears, that was on television, but there's something that's shifting, and it's great to see it. But it's still, I have a very funny, actually term. I call it ovarian territoriality. Forgive me, but this is what I think. I think we're naturally keeping other women away, right? This is physiological. It's not even a joke. And we have to overcome that. We need to work at it, compared with guys who are like, okay, let's play soccer. It is in politics. I witnessed quite a few meetings about fundraising. They were saying guys that go and fundraise over a golf game, and it happens like that. To fundraise for a woman, it's a headache.
I do want to say, Karina, thank you so much for the insight. I do think that I have noticed the shift to older generation, and I do see that younger women collaborate, and there is not as much competition as there used to be. So I think the industry is changing a little bit that way.
Yeah.
It's a very nice thing to see.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that, and I think there's like a pretty clear root from that kind of behavior, in my eyes at least, where like most countries and most societies are pretty patriarchal. So when men get together, they know they're on some kind of equal footing already. They don't have to push other people below them to get above, but because women are like already disadvantaged in most industries, they feel the need to push people under them, even if that's their comrades, but they're friends, they're other women who really like we should be like I think the younger generation is seeing that a little more and a little more like, okay, let's all help each other get up rather than like I have to step on someone to get up. And it's like completely like a defense mechanism and completely a like, if you don't if you don't do it this way, you won't make it kind of thing. It's like not a choice, it's a need. So I feel like that fierce competitiveness and that exclusion, because a lot of women can be super sexist towards their own selves and towards their colleagues. For that reason, I think it's just like that instead of being able to be a powerful woman, they think I have to be like a powerful man.
Yes.
And that's like a lot of, to me, where the behavior might come from. But yeah.
Thank you for the comments. Yeah, it's actually very important because I remember going to Rutgers University, and it was the psychology department. And these women that were there, they were in suits and they looked like men, but they were doing this very amazing research about babies have to play more. And I was like, what's happening? I'm like, oh, because they have to look like, the leadership. And it's, again, I go back to the compassion. They had to survive. You cannot blame people for trying to survive. Of course, you want to be collaborative, like we're changing, but again, blaming is not going to help. It's just being aware of it, calling it out, always calling out, Like, you know, say, hey, why are you so competitive like this? I'm your friend. See what happens. But yeah, that's a big topic. Anybody?
Sorry. I'm sorry, Karina. I thought, please go
No,
ahead.
no, because I wanted to invite people to say more.
Yeah, Srini has his hand up. I've experienced myself, especially different parts of ages, similar circumstances as a female in the workplace. But Srini, your hand is up.
Yes, hi, how are you? So I wanted to follow up kind of, well, a lot of good information, but I think Irene had mentioned like different areas, and you also mentioned like men having a certain expectation, like they're on an equal level. You know, there's been that discussion. So, but I know in a lot of cultures, like in Indian culture, for example, it is a very patriarchal kind of thing. So it's like men are automatically, you know, a totally different level than women in the entire country, in the culture. You know, it's very deeply embedded. So what would your approach be to like someone from that background? Or, you know, I've worked with people, directors who came from there, and they treated the same situation here, you know, with the cast and crew. So how do you approach someone like that, a production like that, where they're used to a culture that's very I guess oppressive, I guess is the word, if women, that's the right word. And they're treating everyone who's not used to it here in this, like in America, you know, what would be your approach if you were an actor, or if you were someone and you saw this happening?
Can you like say exactly? I mean, every culture is different, but you mean like more like an Indian, like shouldn't call it out maybe, but is that what
Yeah.
you
Well, I relate to the Indian side more because I've
Yeah.
seen that, I experienced
Yeah.
it on set and stuff. But I mean, I'm sure it happens in many cultures. It's just, you know, in sort of a male-driven culture, someone coming from that and projecting the same, creating that same scenario here with the crew who's not, you know, who is used to a more level playing field. You know, how would your approach be to
Well,
like talk to the director or producer or whoever?
you just said it. He, or it's a he. Projecting, right? You said the right word. He's projecting what he knows on this other crew. And Ilinka was here before. She mentioned the same thing, right? There's this kind of perception that's happening. So I would say get a coach, you know, to get tuned in. And I know I worked all over the world, in like Burkina Faso and Ouagadougou. I worked in Peru. Very different approaches, and we all have to find the middle way. But I think, especially in the leadership position, when you're faced and you're aware that something might go wrong, get a coach, get a mediator, even better, but a coach to make you aware like what's happening. Now, you also have to state, I think what I'm saying before, like call it out, saying, hey, this is the culture I'm coming from. I know I'm going to cross some boundaries. Right? And please bear with me. You have the permission to tell me gently, not, you know, we're not here on maybe equal food. Sometimes you don't have to be on an equal food, but you have the permission to call me out a little bit on this, or have a couple of people who are trustful, right, to call you out and say, hey, you know, and always when you cross the line, go and apologize, because we're not going to fix ourselves, right? I think it was Mark Maron, the comedian, who said at one point, like, we're not going to fix everything. You know, it's a constant process to become. And we're all going to have flows. We're all going to cross boundaries. We're all going to make mistakes. But unawareness, I feel like my definition of evil is what people do when asleep, when they're not aware, right? Because when you're aware, first of all, you're probably not going to hurt someone. And when you're aware, even if you cross that boundary and you hurt someone, you're going to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So yeah, coach and awareness training.
Okay, thank you.
Fabian, do you have a question for us?
I guess maybe less of a question and more of a story. This is something that happened. And,
I'm sorry, all we hear is your background.
oh shoot.
No, you're fine.
You know what?
There's
Is this a little? Is this a little better?
yeah, that's
Okay.
better.
Cool. So maybe I guess around 2008 or so. I was in my second year of a graduate school in a film directing program at CalArts. And at the time, second year students, you're supposed to direct I guess in the first semester, direct a one act play. And I'd come from an English lit background and a theater background, so I was kind of excited to do that. So I'm in the middle of rehearsing for this one act play in just like different parts of Los Angeles. We were rehearsing, and in the one act by Luis Valdez, originally there's like supposed to be like 10 people in the cast, but I was lucky to get basically 3 people, and basically one actor played doubled up on some roles basically, so it ended up working out overall. However, there was, I guess, definitely an issue where with the and so that actor, he was an older actor from Mexico, maybe in his 50s at the time. And the other 2 people in the cast, they were younger, man and woman. And so, at some point in the rehearsal process, midways or so, there was a bit of flirting, I guess, and it was not, and as far as the material, wasn't really, their characters, weren't like ever flirting or anything in the play itself. And so, just in between rehearsals and stuff, they be kind of flirting with each other. And just the more that we rehearsed, kind of the more, the more that kind of kept going or worsened. And to the point where, like, me as a director, and I was 22, 23 at the time. It was to the point where I was kind of definitely uncomfortable, and I was like, shoot, you should maybe say something, or and I don't know. I mean, I also want to think that, thinking back on it, that maybe the other lead actor, well, not necessarily the lead, but the other actor, that he was maybe uncomfortable about it too. And what ended up happening was, I guess, at some point, I don't know if they're all in their, off time, the the 2 younger actors, well, the male, I guess he asked her out, or something, to which I guess she, just wasn't wanting to go down that path with them. And so, apparently and of course, it just happened to happen the night before, our run, which was a brief run. It was like I think a weekend or so. And so I guess he did this like 1 or 2 nights before, we were going to open. And so, kind of long story short, I guess, he basically, after had been rejected, he basically, just cut off communications with her. And so it went from, being like super flirty to just, like they weren't even speaking to each other anymore. And at some point too, I guess there was I had like a mild mutiny rebellion on my hands, where they threatened to, he first, threatened, or was like, hey, I'm not sure, maybe this is working out, and etc. And again, in the end, it was, it went off fairly well. I was pretty happy, at least with the, at least with the production, anyways. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I mean, now, at 37, I would definitely handle that differently, and or be more head on with it. But yeah, back then I was just thinking like, I'm just wanting to direct a one act here. I'm not, I'm not your, therapist or your family member, or your, I just, was there wanting to help them help me, tell a story in 15 minutes. So yeah, that was, and as far as I know, I mean, I mean, I'm still like friends, at least on social media with them. Haven't seen them in a while, but yeah, that's a story that definitely stuck with me as far as just professionalism on set, and now that and this term boundaries. It's something that since it happened, I mean, it's something that stuck with me, and it's something that I try and watch out for too, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, especially in a more of a leadership type of position. Just to be again, I would do things differently these days, and be a little more direct or more vocal at the very least. But anyways, just wanted to share that story with everyone. And yeah, thank you for having, and thank you to the LA Greek Film Festival for having this panel discussion. It's yeah, it's definitely time to talk about these issues.
Thank you for sharing that. It's a common issue, and I think, as you said, like as the older we get, the better we get at handling this. But they're going to be all the time there. It's who casted those people. Can we have if we have control? The faster you intervene, the better you become much more like attentive in time, and we're avoiding. But yeah, sometimes we have to learn the hard way, unfortunately. We should have had these discussions 10 years ago. So Ted, you have a question?
Well, it's in the interest of pointing out that perhaps, I mean, some people just don't have a filter. They are perhaps in a leadership position and don't understand that they're there to lead, and this may cause them to cross boundaries. And in my experience, I was on set. There was a director. He was under a lot of pressure, and he had he felt like he was not able to properly deal with the client. He felt about himself that he was making poor choices, or that he couldn't convince him to execute his ideas, to allow him to execute his ideas. And so he started to lash out. And I was the cinematographer on this project, and he yelled at me across the set. He said, "This is the worst lighting I've ever seen you do." And so so what did I do? I said, instead of yelling back, I went over to him, and I stood next to him. I looked I looked at him, and I said, "I hear you telling me that you're not happy with the way that things are proceeding right now. If you are specific and have specific changes that you would like me to make, I'll be happy to make them. Just let me know, and I'll make things right." And he said, "Never mind, it looks fine. Let's just shoot."
Yeah, that's a brilliant way of doing it.
So where did I learn that technique? There's a technique called nonviolent communication, and it's often taught as a leadership class. And in this, you use a methodology where you say what you see, as though you're looking through a camera and being objective. You become aware of how that affects you and or other people and your feelings, and then you make then you can make a request without expectation.
Exactly.
It's very difficult to follow. It takes a lot of practice. But I found it useful.
It's very useful, and thank you for bringing that out. And it happens so much. I'm going to say that I chose my cinematographer because he got fired, and I got yelled at by this DP who was like so abusive. He was working as a gaffer, and then I went after him. I was like, I want this guy because he stood up to this person in a kind way, and that's how I got to have my best collaborator. So, you know, we found each other. It's the good news is that we're all out there, right? Who have the capacity to take things down. But what you said, the technique is very important. And I like what I pointed out right here is about us, right? You cannot control the other. You can be very present. That's the power. You're much more, you're so grounded and so present. You say, oh, so you're unhappy about this. What can I do? And then the whole insanity goes away. It's almost like magic. It's really, it's repetitive actually, but it goes back to, you don't even have to worry too much about other things, but being super present and having the courage to say what you think in a compassionate way, because that's what you did. And thank you for that. And thank you for sharing that story. So crucial. And I want to add one last thing that I think it's important. These people in leadership who are so abusive, you know, and why did they get in leadership and why they got so crazy? Because we all work with them. Don't work with them. You know, it's very simple.
If I can follow up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just saying it's not easy, right? It's really, but when we have the choice, because we all have to make a living, we all have to, probably nobody's going to hire me right now after this, but I'm just saying, if you have the choice, if you have the power, step out. Don't put yourself like I've done, right? I have to finish this film. No, you don't have to. You have to do it the right way. You have to do it with the right team. It's easy said than done, but yeah, I think that's why people get up there and they get delusional, because also they don't have feedback, right? Nobody is like the vault is not functioning, and accountability is not functioning. So thank you all. I think we should end. This is our cue. It's 1:30.
Thank you, Karina, so much. It has been so insightful and so great to engage in this kind of a conversation at this time. I think it's the time of women rising in a way. So I look forward to seeing how this will change the industry, not only the film industry, but every industry. So thank you so much for pointing us to that direction, and we now have to do the work.
Thank you. It's amazing to have a platform and to start this conversation, and this is your brain baby. So I'm very grateful for this. So important.
You're welcome. Thank you. And Lauren.
Thank you so much, Karina and Ersi, and every single one of you here with us today for taking the time to highlight this important issue. We would like to thank our sponsors, and again, each and every one of you for joining us here today, and thank you for supporting and the support of Greeks in Entertainment. But before we log off, make sure you are registered for our other panels and Q&As that we have scheduled the next week. Man of God, the Q&A with cast and crew, and the one and only Mickey Rourke is tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And you can watch the very first US screening tonight exclusively at LAGFF. And that will be at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And they are screenings just as if you were in a theater. So they start on time, and there's like a 2-second pause. So pop your popcorn and get ready for the night. But you will find the complete schedule on lagff.org under the events, and make sure you are following us on Instagram and Facebook for the latest updates. Until tomorrow, bye for now.